Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of the best Doctor Who episodes you've never heard of. As mentioned in my previous video, we're going to be looking at possibly the most popular Doctor in the entire show's history, Tom Baker. Now I'm sure I don't have to give an awful lot of context about this. Tom Baker played the fourth Doctor from 1974 to 1981 and is the longest serving Doctor. Not only is he the longest serving Doctor, but he is also considered one of the best Doctors to ever take on the role, and possibly the most iconic. This era produced some of the best stories of the classic series, arguably, with Robots of Death, Pyramid of Mars, Genesis of the Daleks, The Talons of Weng Chang, and many more. This has to be considered one of the richest eras in terms of quality. With such a long tenure as the Doctor, as you can expect, there were several different head writers, showrunners, script editors, and episodes. So with all of that going on, you'd imagine there'd be a lot of episodes to talk about here, and you'd be right. A simple Wikipedia search would reveal that over 51 episodes were considered and rejected in Tom Baker's time. More than enough content for me to do yet another one of these videos. See how this video does first, eh? One thing's for sure, when I was making this video I was definitely not short of choices. The first story I'm going to talk about here would have been a very controversial decision, as it involves the death of Sarah Jane Smith. Being penned by writer Douglas Camfield, this story would have been called The Lost Legion and would have centred around a French outpost in a North African town. This outpost would have become a battleground for two alien races, the Skarkel and Makurians. So assumedly two battles would have been taking place at the same time, without the others knowing. Beyond that, not much else is actually known about this script, other than it would have seen the death of Sarah Jane Smith at the hands of this conflict. This story actually made it to the scripting stage, but the production team quickly lost interest in it and instead did The Hand of Fear. I feel like this story would have caused way too much controversy at the time, as Sarah Jane Smith was even then one of the most beloved companions ever, and killing her off would have been horrifying for the kids watching, would have been terrible for the long-term fans watching, because we'd have never got her back for so many things. Sarah Jane Adventures, you can kiss that goodbye. School Reunion, no thank you. And K9 and Company would have never happened either for the classic fans. All in all, the location sounds like a great idea, the actual concept sounds really interesting, but would it have been achievable on the budget, and would we want Sarah Jane to have permanently died in 1976? I don't think so. Now, the second story is a bit more interesting in terms of what it could have added to the canon. The second story I'm looking at here was penned by Pennant Roberts in 1979 and was entitled Irenia or Irelia. I have no point of reference for the actual pronunciation, sorry. This would have added to the idea of the Doctor not being able to work the TARDIS too well, as he would have arrived at this planet at the wrong point in history and would have been accused of a terrible crime. The other plot going on in this story would have been a typical two men going after a lover story, apparently. But other than that, we don't know too much. But we do know that it was pitched multiple times to the Doctor Who production team, once in 1979 and once at some point during Eric Saywood's tenure as the script editor of Doctor Who in the 80s. Now, this story particularly, there's not too much to go off, but I am always interested in the idea of the Doctor not being in control of the TARDIS, or not being fully able to land where he wants to and when he wants to. I think that's really interesting. Are we better or worse in this story not existing? I think it would have just fell in line with a lot of those mid to late 70s Fourth Doctor stories where they're okay, but there's nothing really memorable about them. Now, what I've saved best for last actually has quite an interesting story behind it. So in 1977, after the episode The Deadly Assassin, the BBC really wanted to push for Doctor Who to go back to Gallifrey here and there, because that episode had done so well. As you recall, in that season we did get a story going to Gallifrey, but this was not it. This grand story would have seen us return to Gallifrey and the introduction of a cat-like species on Gallifrey. This was set to draw an awful lot from Japanese culture, especially ancient Japanese culture, though they don't specify why in any articles I've found. This story would have been quite action heavy though, as there would have been jousting and battle scenes that were proposed. I imagine that's probably why this episode never got made. This story, of course, was shown to the production office and was deemed to be workable with Doctor Who's budget. And they instead hastily wrote together the script for The Invasion of Time, which featured the return of the Sontarans. Now, my verdict from this is that it would have been lovely to have seen Gallifrey again. It would always be nice to see Gallifrey, especially in that era when they depicted it as this bleak, corrupt place full of old fools. I think if you expand on that idea, it becomes really dark and you learn a little bit about why the Doctor left Gallifrey. And yeah, I think if you had done this story right and gave us a bit more context as to what it would have been about, I'd have been very happy with it. But using the location of Gallifrey in that era was brilliant. Even in Invasion of Time, it's considered to be quite a weak story. Luckily, as the 70s became the 80s, the production teams realised this and started using Gallifrey quite regularly, most notably in the Trial of a Time Lord series. So of all of these stories, which one do I like the best? Personally, The Lost Legion sounds like the best one of the lot, as long as they edited out that Sarah Jane doesn't die, because why? Why would you do that so soon, and why would you deprive us of having what we've had over the past subsequent 40 plus years, you know? I think a lot of the stories here really depended on budget, and you can tell when these are being pitched that even for such simple concepts, sometimes they couldn't afford to do them. The second half of that Tom Baker era is sometimes a little difficult to watch, as you could tell they were constantly changing creative direction, and it just got progressively sillier towards the end of that era, until John Nathan Turner came around. And I believe season 18 is probably my favourite season of the Fourth Doctor's, up there with his first. Obviously, when making this video, I avoided trying to mention Sharda, because I think a lot of people already know the story behind that. It was uncompleted because of BBC strikes in 1980, 1979, and would later be recycled to be used in the Five Doctors and would get subsequent book, audio, and DVD releases. I just feel like that would have been a bit done to death, you know? Unfortunately, none of the stories I've mentioned have been subsequently made into books or audio dramas. But hopefully, from what I've given you, you have a little bit of an idea of what these stories could have looked like and could have been. If you let me know in the comments which one you think would have been great, I would be very happy to get a conversation going. But that's it for this video today. I hope that you've enjoyed, I hope you've learned something new, and I hope that you stick around because I've already got started on the next video. We're going to be covering the lost season of Colin Baker. Season 23. You heard me, I'm going to do the entire season. If you like what you're seeing on this channel so far, please do stick around, leave a like, consider subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you soon.